Hey there, Careblazers. Welcome to the place where we talk about everything dementia. I'm Natalie Edmonds, board-certified geropsychologist, and in today's video, we are going to talk about what you can do if your loved one is one of the many people with dementia who also have eating difficulties. So there are a couple different eating difficulties that can happen when somebody has dementia. On one end, it can feel like your loved one is no longer eating at all, and that's a concern, obviously. And on the other hand, it can feel like your loved one is eating everything in sight and eating you out of house and home, and that's also a concern, especially for their health if they have health conditions such as diabetes. So in today's video, we are going to focus on what to do if your loved one is somebody with dementia who also is eating everything in sight to the point that it's impacting their health in a negative way. It's common with dementia, especially for certain kinds of dementia, that your loved one's eating patterns will change. For instance, with frontotemporal dementia, many times your loved one's appetite will just go through the roof and increase, especially for things like sweets. So recently I was talking to a caregiver who is a mother of two small children, but also takes care of her own mother. Her own mother lives with her in the home with her two small kids. And her mother, who had frontotemporal dementia, was constantly in the pantry, like ransacking every corner, every shelf for any kind of sweet she can get her hands on, no matter the time of day, no matter when, no matter if she even had eaten just before. So sometimes in dementia, people eat a lot because they just simply forgot they ate. And other times it could be the specific disease process that just keeps them feeling hungry. So for this particular caregiver, she was feeling at wit's end because her mother was constantly going through the pantry, eating all of the treats, and her mother also had diabetes, which meant that her blood sugars were through the roof. And on top of that, her two little kids were pretty bummed every time they'd go to the pantry and all of their favorite snacks were already gone because grandma had eaten them all. In talking to the caregiver, the daughter, we had talked about things that she had already tried to try to help reduce how much her mom was eating all of these sweets. So obviously telling her mother to stop eating the sweets did not work. And so this particular caregiver started hiding the sweets in the pantry, hiding them on the bottom shelves, on the top shelves, even using healthy boxes of crackers and cereal and things like that to serve as a decoy and putting like the sweet snacks inside. But none of that was working. The mother was looking everywhere. So not only did her attempts to hide the sweets fail, and her mom continued to eat and her blood sugars continued to go high, but the caregiver was left with a pretty disastrous pantry on her hands. So we sat down and talked about things to do to try to intervene. So here are some tips that you can take away if you have a loved one who is eating lots of sweets in sight, okay? So before I get started with the specific tips that may be helpful to you in your situation, I want to be clear that I am not saying that your loved one with dementia should never have sweets. I don't believe that at all. In fact, I think anybody, regardless of what disease you may have, deserves to indulge from time to time. So I don't want you to take away that I am saying never have sweets. I'm not saying that, but I am saying when it gets to the point that it's interfering with their health in a big way, you may need to step in and do something to try to reduce how often that's happening, okay? So tip number 1, hiding spots. Find a good one. It might take some time to figure this out, but basically you want to find a spot that your loved one currently doesn't go to. So in the example I gave earlier, the caregiver's mother clearly knew the pantry had the goods. So she was constantly going to the pantry and looking and ransacking every nook and cranny until she found the goods, and most of the time she did. So in talking with this caregiver, we had to think of a place where her mother never really went to. And in this case, it was pretty easy. It was still in the kitchen, so it was nearby and convenient for the kids to be able to still get their snacks. But we came down to the idea of a lower kitchen cabinet that her mother never really opened any of the lower cabinets, and so we decided to try that out as a spot to store the goodies. So the kids were still able to access it, and the kids were told to only access it when grandma wasn't in the vicinity so that it wouldn't tip her off. But in this way, it allowed the kids to still have their treats. It allowed the grandma to still go into the pantry and look for whatever she wanted to, but the vast majority of all the goodies was in a place that she had no idea. And so I want you to stop and think about what potential hiding spots might exist in your house that would be pretty easy to transition the sweets or whatever goods your loved one is overindulging in. I had one caregiver whose husband pretty much ate anything and everything in sight, including alcohol. And this caregiver liked to have wine in the house. So for her, she ended up storing her wine bottles underneath her bathroom sink. And when her husband went to sleep, and if she felt like it, that's when she would go grab the bottle of wine and pour herself a glass. So it can be anywhere in the house. Basically, you are just looking for a spot that your loved one doesn't really go around, or a cabinet or a drawer that your loved one does not open. Okay, tip number 2 is to change it up. Now, there is a possibility that at some point your loved one with dementia will catch on to this new hiding spot. And in that event, you just have to know it's a possibility, and that when it happens, you just have to find another hiding spot. So just because it worked for a little bit and then it stopped doesn't mean it won't work again. You just have to go back to step 1, be creative, think outside the box, find a new hiding spot. Tip number 3 is do not call attention to what you are doing. It's not going to make your loved one feel good for you to call to their attention that you are now taking away their favorite snack or their favorite food or whatever it may be, and you are hiding it to protect them and to manage their health. That's not going to go over well. It's not going to make them feel well. So instead, what you can do is, for instance, if we go back to the example I talked about earlier, keep a few snacks in the pantry, however many snacks you'd feel comfortable with your loved one eating during that day. Keep more healthy alternatives in that pantry, and then just keep the rest in your hiding spot. You don't have to tell your loved one you're hiding the sweets in another place. You don't even have to let your loved one know there was a change. Just go about business as usual, leaving mostly healthy snacks as the alternative in the original location, adding a few sweets that would still keep their interest and keep them a little happy but maintain their health, and store the rest in your new hiding spot. In general, this is a good tip for many things with dementia, not just talking about food. In most cases, it's not going to go over well to tell your loved one you are doing X, Y, or Z because they're not remembering or because they're doing things that you don't want them to do. Those are just things that are going to make them feel like they have lost control, and it's just going to make them feel bad. So in this example with eating too much or eating the goods, make the changes. Don't call any attention to it. Go about business as usual, keeping some snacks that they like and mostly healthy things in the original location. So to recap, if you are caring and loving for somebody with dementia who is eating everything in sight to the point that it's putting their health at risk, number 1, find a good hiding spot to hide the things that you really want to make sure they do not overindulge in. Number 2, realize that you're probably going to have to change that hiding spot at some point once your loved one catches on. And number 3, don't call attention to this change that you're making. It's going to make them feel awful and may even send them on a mad search party around the house looking for the thing that they want. All right, Careblazers, I hope this video has been helpful to you in some way. If you yourself have dealt with a loved one who is eating everything in sight, comment below on what you have found to be helpful so that maybe your other Careblazers will be able to benefit from your experiences. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next week, bye.